moment I walked in the house, something was different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so crazy. I guess I never knew that you could see life leave, like life leaving someone. But they're still here in front of you. They're still breathing. They're still alive.
Mm-hmm.
But she was just different. It was very obvious that, something could be happening very soon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm so excited to have you here joining us again for another episode. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate your support and joining me on this journey. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. I'm so excited to have you as well. I hope that you enjoy the conversation that we are about to have today. If you have not subscribed yet to my channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and also hit that bell to get notifications of more videos like this. This is the Chayil Lifestyle Show, where real Chayil women who are authentically living a Chayil lifestyle come together to have pertinent, passionate, and purposeful conversations on living life the way that God has called us to. And so on today's episode, we are continuing that conversation that we've been having on the blog on self-care and continuing the conversation around breast cancer awareness. This time around, we want to talk a little bit more on our faith versus our fear when breast cancer hits close to home and we are impacted by it in our lives and in our family. So I'm so excited for us to have this conversation together and just be open and honest about what that struggle is, channeling our fear versus our faith. All right, and so I am so excited to have with us today our guest, Miss Desiree Norwood. Desiree is an educator, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a fiancé, a worker in the kingdom, and also a Chayil woman, a real life Chayil woman. Just to give you a little bit of tidbit and background on Desiree, she is a math coach for Colonial School District in Delaware. As an educator, she is passionate about building a love for math for both children and adults. Desiree attends Seeds of Greatness Bible Church in Newcastle, Delaware, where she also volunteers with the preteens ministry there. The center of her life is faith and family. And so when she lost her mother to breast cancer in 2013, both areas were challenged. However, today, Desiree is thankful that for those same core values, because as much as they challenged her, they were also the source of her healing through this process. So welcome, Desiree, to the Chayil Lifestyle Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about this.
I know, I'm excited to have you. And I guess full disclosure to our viewers, Desiree is one of my closest friends. And so I really wanted to interview her because I was able to kind of watch her go through the process of her mom being diagnosed twice with cancer and also her mom losing that battle with cancer. And so I really just wanted her to give us a little bit of insight to what that battle is when, as Christians, we're battling our faith versus our fear and how to overcome that. I'm actually wearing a little pin that we did a few years ago in honor of her mom. Every year, we usually do a walk, so this is one of the shirts as well. See if I can show it for Miss Melinda. But we usually do a breast cancer walk every year in honor of her. And actually, when she was alive, we used to, when we were in college, do walks with her then as well. Miss Melinda, who is Desiree's mom, was a wonderful woman. I feel like, to me, she was a real life Chayil woman as well. She really exemplified so much of that Proverbs 31 woman. She was my Delaware mom, so I went to school in Delaware, and so I always felt like if anything happened to me, I could call her. So, we continue to celebrate her life and her legacy that she's left behind, which part of it is the faith that is in Desiree. So without boring you guys more, we're gonna deep dive into some questions here. So first question I had for you, Desiree, was how old were you the first time your mom was diagnosed with cancer? And kind of just walk us through what that process was like. What was going through your mind, the emotions that you felt the first time she got that diagnosis?
When my mother was first diagnosed with cancer, I was in high school. I believe I was in my senior year of high school, so I'm 17, 18. Um, and it was pretty much going to get a mammogram, going for a regular, doctor's visit, and they found a lump. I remember feeling, and it might have just been my immaturity, but not feeling too afraid at the time. Just understanding that, okay, there are people who, have cancer, and it doesn't have to be a death sentence for all. So I was pretty hopeful. And there was a lot just going on. I was going to school, and getting ready for college. And so I just remember just really, we were a faith-filled family and are a faith-filled family. So just really sticking with what we believed, and just believing for her healing, which did come, I think, about 2 years into the first battle. So, yeah.
Okay. And I feel like that was like right around the time I met you at freshman orientation at the University of Delaware, when she was going through that treatment and recovery. So tell us a little bit about what was that recovery like the first time? How long was her treatment? I know you just said it was about 2 years before she kind of fully recovered from that. And how did it overall impact the family dynamic? I know you guys were kind of standing on the word of God and believing that God was going to heal her, but was there any impact overall on the family dynamic? Did it strengthen your faith as a family? What did that do to the family overall? And what did the recovery process look like for her the first time?
I think, well, first, recovery looked like, she went through chemotherapy, she did the radiation. It was really tough to watch her go through, losing, her hair, her nails turning really dark. She gained a whole lot of weight from the steroids that she was on. She did not look like herself. She didn't feel like herself. When I go back and look at those pictures, which I don't know why I came across them recently, but I have, it is hard. They're hard to look at, because that's not the Melinda I remember on a regular, seeing her on a day-to-day basis. But she had a hard time. But my mother was such a positive person. She was such a warm spirit that she didn't let that stop her. You met me for the very first time at freshman orientation, and she was with me going through the cancer battle. Gray fuzz on her hair. Her head is her hair was just coming back at that time. So the recovery process was tough. I remember her getting the surgery to have some lymph nodes removed and having to have the drains underneath her arms and things like that. And I just remember that being uncomfortable. So it wasn't an easy process, but it was about, I'm going to say, maybe about a year, I believe, of different treatments. And then the change that it made for our family is it made us even closer. We were already close, but we knew we couldn't sacrifice any time. We needed to make sure that we took advantage of every moment to be together and to live. And I really saw her after that battle live, and do things that she had never done before. And that stuck with me.
It's so funny that you just talked about her living. That's like literally what I remember about her. She was just always such a ball of energy to be around. Her attitude was always so positive. Some of my fondest memories I have of her is from her taking us to her ball dancing, cotillions, to spring break trips, and cooking with her, and her stories, her advice. She was just always so positive and really just an amazing woman. I really personally feel blessed to have met her and known her. But I feel like I saw her live in those years post, the first diagnosis. So tell me, when life sort of went back to normal, she recovered. Did you ever feel like the cancer would return? Did she ever feel like, was there ever a time that you or her, or, did you guys ever think that the cancer would come back a second time?
I'm gonna be honest, that is not something that for me, it had never crossed my mind. It was like, you are healed, and we're moving on. Life is moving on. It's a victory. And I think that might have made the second time a more major blow, because we weren't. I don't think it was ever a discussion, to be honest, in our household at all. So yeah, no.
Yeah, and so I told you before we started that I have my box of tissues here, and I feel like I almost did it already. Whew,
Right, me.
I'm not gonna cry. Let me just grab one just in case.
Right.
I kind of feel the tears coming a little
I
bit,
see.
but
I got one right here in the corner.
but I remember when she told me that she had it the second time, it was actually at Zoe's birthday. I feel like it was maybe her second birthday or maybe it was her first birthday, but
Yeah.
I had stopped by for like cake at her other grandmother's house or whatever. And your mom told me that her cancer was back. And I literally was just like, I was like at a loss of words,
Yeah.
didn't really know how to take it because at that time obviously both of us, we've always been Christians, we come from a good Christian foundation, but I feel like at that particular time in our mid 20s, because this was like post college now, I think I might have been in grad school, but it might have even been post grad school. But I feel like my faith had just been so strengthened and I had grown so much spiritually. And it was primarily due to her because I remember right after undergrad, we were like church hopping and she invited us to Seeds of Greatness. And that's how we started going there because she had been going there. And I know that just going back there really revitalized my faith. But what was that like? How old was Miss Melinda the second time it came? How did she find out? And what was the time frame between the first and second diagnosis?
So she was diagnosed the first time at 42. And then, went through the 2-year battle, and then she was 52, I believe,
Oh wow.
when we found out the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And how we found out the second time was very different than the first. It wasn't like a routine mammogram. It was, we went to Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
and we were walking the park, and she was struggling. She was having a really difficult time breathing. And we would have to take a lot of breaks, and it just was unusual. We thought maybe she was just out of shape, something was going on. Like, what's going on? Like, this is not normal. When we get back, we're going to get your diet together, things like that.
Yeah.
And when we came back, she had gotten what we thought was the flu, but she had it for like 2 months. She would keep going back and forth to the doctor, wasn't able to shake it. And then they finally asked her to go get a chest x-ray and all of those follow-up scans and things. And that's how we found out that she had cancer the second time. Like I said, very challenging to our faith. And it was more extreme this time. Like it was she was in stage 4. I now know that she was given this time around only 6 months to live. I did not know that at the time. So I didn't know how extreme or how far along she was in the process. I knew we had what Christianity had to offer because that's where she went at the time. It was not going to be helpful. So we had to go and find like specialists, like the best of the best to help her. So that did give me an idea of how bad it was. So it was definitely, it was a challenge to our faith, but I think because God had did it before, we knew he could do it again. So we went in there with that, and there was so much favor. Like her doctor is a, highly recognized doctor, and he was full. He wasn't taking any new patients. And we pretty much talked to the nurses that worked with him, and they got her in there. So just knowing that she got the doctor that we wanted her to have, she was going to get the treatment that many people weren't able to get, we were believing that she would be healed at the end of that process.
Wow. So at this time, fast forward, it's like 10 years later, you're older, you are more grounded in your faith, you're more cognizant of the disease, the impacts. You have a daughter at this time who's super close to her grandmother as well. Walk us through, the emotions. I know you've talked a little bit about it being a blow to your faith, but what was the journey like this time around for you, for your family, even though you didn't know it at the time that the prognosis was just 6 months to live, not knowing that, but seeing everything that you guys were doing differently this time around. What was that like? And knowing that you also now had Zoe in the picture, that had, her grandmother's life was at risk, basically.
So it was sort of, when I think about my daughter, it was a blessing in a way, because I had my daughter 2 years a little more than 2 years before she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother's diagnosed with cancer. She lives for 2 years. So it kind of works out in that she was home often. So she got a chance to spend time with my daughter that she would have never been able to have.
Mm-hmm.
This time was different because the first time I was young, I wasn't as able to help. And I had my own thing going on. Like I just was, I'm a teenager. I'm in my own world. This time it was dropping everything, families dropping everything to get what she needs.
Yeah.
And her process was different. She got to a point where she couldn't use her arm anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had to drive her, to Penn Medicine when she needed to get her treatments. So I was much more involved this time. But I am happy for the fact that she got a chance, because she wasn't at work, to spend time with my daughter and them to grow really close.
Yeah.
Again, it was a challenge for our faith, but I really don't believe that we even had an inkling that she was going to pass, probably until 2 weeks before she did.
Wow. That was one of my questions I was going to ask you, was just, did you ever think my mom is going to die? And it's so funny that you say it was about 2 weeks before, because I think 2 weeks before she died is when I kind of felt that way. I don't know why I keep crying. Sorry. But I remember visiting her in the hospital on a Sunday after church. And I think it was literally like 2 weeks before, or maybe a week before, because I know she ended up going home right before she passed. And, I sat there in the hospital with her, and, as usual, her spirits were just high, and she just kept a positive attitude, didn't, give on that feeling that she felt like it was coming to an end. And I even remember her telling me that she was going to start a dating agency to help us find husbands that day. But I walked out of the hospital and I was just like crying. And I remember calling, one of my friends and saying, oh my God, I think, Miss Melinda is not going to make it. And that was, I think, the last time I saw her, because I feel like I tried to come to the house to see her the following week, and something, happened and I wasn't able to, and then she passed away. But, if there was any way that you could put it into words, what was it like, finding out, or just feeling and knowing that this is it, this is the end, I'm gonna lose like the closest person in my life, like I'm about to lose my mother? Like what was that emotion like? Walk us through what you were thinking, what you were feeling at that time.
My mother was a very faith-filled woman. She was God-fearing, and she was the center, like, of our family when it came to faith. And so that 2 weeks, probably, I think you visited her when she was at Penn, probably. She was not able to lay down to go to sleep because she couldn't breathe. And we went to get a scan of her lungs, and she turned and she asked me, do you think I'm going to die? And that was probably the most difficult question to hear her. She never spoke like that.
Yeah.
And so when she asked, that's when I knew.
Yeah.
That something was different, because she's always walked in faith. Let me take a minute so I can get my words together.
Yes.
When she asked me, the only response I could think of, you have a relationship with God. What has he told you?
Yeah.
Did he tell you it was time? Because if he hasn't said anything,
yeah.
If you're not sure, then we're going to keep fighting.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't think I've heard anything, we're going to fight. So anyway, we fight. I come home from work. This was February 13th. And she had went to the doctor earlier that day. And when she came home and I walked in the house, something was different. And it's so crazy. I guess I never knew that you could see life leaving someone. But they're still here in front of you. They're still breathing, they're still alive. But she was just different. It was very obvious that, something could be happening very soon. I didn't know it was going to be an overnight process. I remember saying, saying to my dad's, starting to talk, we got to figure out a schedule. Let's figure out how we're going to take care of her. We're not going to put her in hospice, all of this stuff. But I'm like, I don't know if we have that much time. I was like, should I call my brother? He, he needs to get home. Anyway, so what those last moments look like with her and then her actual passing, we spend that night, because for me, there was a feeling. I think God was revealing it to me that this was our last moments. We spent that time surrounding her in prayer. She spent some of her last moments with Zoe. We were all in the same house. Zoe came downstairs and she spent some time. My mother would sleep downstairs just so she could sit up. And she literally laid down, and that was it. That was the end. We didn't know till the morning. And I think life is happening so quickly. You have to be moving and figuring out what the next steps are, because the next morning we couldn't wake her up. We called the ambulance, all of those. We do CPR. It was very hands-on in this process. And I don't know if everybody experiences that, but you're so busy just trying to get things done that you don't really get a moment to really take it in. And I do believe that God fortified me in the moment, because I'm making the phone calls. My dad is as well, but he has to take care of the logistics. I'm making the phone calls, and I'm getting the house together, and I'm getting the medications for the EMTs, and getting all of those pieces together. And I don't think I was able to really process it until maybe the next day. She died on Valentine's Day. She likes to, be born on Christmas Day and leave on Valentine's Day, and she take an interest in the exit. But yeah, and so it did take a little bit to process, but I think, again, my faith and being surrounded by people of faith is really important to the process, because they'll help carry you through. And I don't know if I ever probably dealt with it all the way, but that's at least how I've been dealing with it since.
Yeah. Wow. That was super profound, just kind of hearing those last moments there. As you processed, I know that it was hard for you to process in the moment, but when you got a moment to catch your breath, and you're now realizing in these last hours that, this is it, what was that battle like, your faith versus the reality that was now happening? Like, every word of God that you've stood on, is literally being shaken in front of you. What was that like in that moment, in those first maybe couple of days following, where there's this void of her no longer being in the house, and you realize, like, this is real? What was that battle like? What was your conversation with God like? Did you even talk to him? Were you like, I can't even talk to you right now, because as his children, we can get upset with him? What was that like?
I think in those first days, it was exactly what it was before. It was, I understand that I don't understand all that you are doing. And so I'm going to believe in who you are and who you always have been. And I'm going to walk it out, at least for this next week. I got to be strong for my family. I am now the woman of this family, because it's just me and my brother and my father. And that's how I saw my role at the time. Now, after that, there was a different challenge, because we believe in a cancer-free zone at my church. I still believe it, but it was hard to hear, understanding that I had just lost my mom. And then it also it challenged my faith, in that I knew that there was more to him that I had to learn. Because I confessed her healing. I believed her healing. We prayed for her regularly. We bathed her in prayer. Her family and friends did the same. And we still have to do without her at this point. That did not make sense to me. And it made me feel like I can pray for something and it's not guaranteed. And that was something that I had to deal with, because that was a blow to my faith. I still believed in God. I wasn't angry with him per se, but our conversations were, I don't understand you. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand how you work. And the not knowing
Mm-hmm.
exactly how it all works was the most difficult part and can still be difficult for
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
at this point. Not knowing that he's sovereign and he allows for things to happen. And I'm not always going to understand it in this lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's real and that's honest. And I know that losing your mom definitely challenged my faith a lot because I remember praying for her and I was so sure like, God, you did it before, you're gonna do it again. But like you said, we thank God for our faith. We thank God that He has allowed us to be surrounded with um pastors and other spiritual leaders that continue to strengthen, help us to be strengthened in our faith. And I think, again, as I mentioned before, the best legacy that she could have left behind was leaving her family faith filled. And so, with that being said, we continue to trust that God is still God. And for Miss Melinda and all those that we have lost to breast cancer or to any other form of cancer, I just like us to just have a moment of silence and just continue to pray that their soul will rest in peace, and as believers that we will see them again in heaven. So just a moment of silence. May the souls of the dearly departed, rest in peace and continue to rest in peace. I hope you've enjoyed that episode that you just viewed. Please be sure to visit the blog link below to read more about this conversation, faith versus fear, and being able to live out our faith versus our fear when cancer does hit close to home or when any other, obstacle or issue hits close to home. If you haven't subscribed yet and you enjoyed this and want to get more content like this, please be sure to hit the subscribe button below, hit the bell below, give it a thumbs up, share this with a friend, share this with a sister. Thank you so much again for joining me for this episode. I look forward to another episode with you. Have a blessed day.